Everyone? Good. That's good. It's the last day of the conference, right? I would like to believe it's the most fun day because we get to go attend the party in the evening and then head back home. So, are you guys going to the party tonight? Cool. Awesome. First of all, on behalf of Microsoft, I would like to thank all of you for attending this event, taking time off from your busy schedules at work. We all know how that is, and then attend these sessions, and also taking time away from your families and coming to this event. Really want to thank you for that. So I hope you had a good time over here, and the party is also great for you. So this session is about Office Developer Story in Microsoft Office 365 environment. So for a show of hands, how many of you have seen or attended a session on Office 365? Okay, so most of you have done that. That's good. So we're going to jump more into the developer part of it in this session. It's a level 200 session. We are not going to be looking at any code in this session. We will look at some no-code solutions. We're going to do a lot of demos during this session. One of the things that you need to keep in mind that this is a beta product. All the demos are going to be done on the beta site. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So far, all the demos have worked, and I hope that they will continue to work in this session as well. Now, keeping that in mind, that it's a beta site, you'll see that sometimes the performance is not the greatest. That's not going to be the performance at general availability. So please do not form a perception that this thing is really slow. We are working hard, and we are trying to fix those performance glitches that you might see during the session. My name is Devender Singh. I'm a senior product manager in the Microsoft Office division. My area of focus is Office programmability and the developer story for Office clients. I've been with this group 6 months, but I've been at Microsoft for 9 years working in engineering teams in different roles as an engineer. I've worked in the test team, worked as a program manager, and in multiple product groups. I also have today with me Donovan Follett. So Donovan, if you could raise your hand. He's a senior technical evangelist. I'm pretty sure some of you must have seen his sessions. I'm going to defer some questions to him. He's an expert at Office development, so he'll help us answer some of the questions. All right, so the session objective. Well, one of the objectives is just getting a level set as to what it means to develop in this Office 365 environment. What are the resources that you will have? What are the resources your organization might have? What are the resources your customers might have? So just getting a level set around that and getting a level set around how some of the subscription plans might influence what solutions you can develop or not. Then the key question, what remains same and what changes? So we're going to go a little bit into that and talk about some of the things that have changed, some of the things that you have to consider when you're going to develop these solutions, and then look at demos to show that things continue to work the same in some of the areas, or most of the areas. The key takeaway at the end of this session, I hope there is clarity in how the solutions that you've been developing on Office or you plan to develop on Office, you can continue with that or build on that in this Office 365 environment. There have been some interesting questions, so hopefully that will get clarified by the end of this session. So what is Office 365? Well, it's Experience Office as it was meant to be, without having to set up the servers so that you can focus on serving the needs of your organization or your customers. Don't have to worry about setting up the Exchange server, the Lync server, and so on. For our discussion, the two products that we'll focus on is Microsoft Office Professional Plus and Microsoft SharePoint Online. We will not be discussing Exchange Online or Lync Online in this session. today. So Office 365 is a subscription service. It's meant for small organizations, mid-sized organizations, and enterprises. So what that means is there are different kinds of plans available for people based on what their needs are. But at the same time, this is going to influence some of the decisions that you're going to make in terms of Office solution development. So let's look at the right-hand side first, the enterprise users. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I need a solution for which uses like Access services or Excel services, the key question to ask would be, do you have the E3 plan or the E4 plan? Because if they do not have the E3 plan or the E4 plan, these services will be disabled. So you will not be able to develop solutions around InfoPath Forms, Access services, Excel services, and Visio services. So that's something in terms of the development that you have to keep in mind. With the two plans, you also get the Office Pro Plus subscription, which is the Office client. And it works in a subscription model, and we'll go into details in the next slide about that. So on the left-hand side, the K plans. Well, you might ask, there is no Office Professional Plus, so how can I go about developing Office solutions in this environment? Well, as Donovan says, Office is Office is Office. Okay? So if you have rich client through a retail license, you can still use that on your desktop with the kiosk plans. You will not have the InfoPath Forms, Access services, and so on, but you will still be able to use the retail Office client and connect and upload documents from that to the SharePoint Online environment. So in other words, if there are solutions around like add-ins and customization that you might have, they will continue to work even with the K plan. You can also use the Office clients to access SharePoint list data using the SharePoint client object model in this, even when the users have this plan, the kiosk plans. So we're not going to discuss the pricing and each and every feature, but the key to understand over here is that you will have Office, you could have Office available in some form, even with the kiosk plans and the plans, the E1 and the E2 plans.
So does that mean there's no extensibility for Office web apps?
Correct, that's correct. Right. Well, Office Professional Plus, most of you have attended the sessions. I'm not going to go too deep into it. These are the different clients that are available as a part of this package. It's a full rich client suite. It's a monthly subscription model. What that means is at the end of every 30 days, your subscription is verified. If everything is good, you can continue. If it is not, you get a grace period to go and resolve the subscription issue. And if for some reason you're not able to resolve the subscription issue, in that case, the client goes into a diminished functionality mode. No documents will be removed or deleted, but you will just go into the view mode. You will not be able to save or edit any document if your subscription is invalid. And it's the per user provisioning. The apps are similar as Office Professional Plus, and Office web apps continue to work on Office 365. And you get the choice to install 32-bit or 64-bit Office Professional Plus. So now we go a little deeper into the setup environment as to what it's going to be like as a developer. So this is a scenario where your organization has, say, taken the E3 or E4 plan, and you need to install the Office Professional Plus on your machine. Once you have been provisioned as a user by your administrator, you'll be able to go into the portal, and there'll be a link to go ahead, click, install Office Professional Plus. It's very straightforward. During the install process, you'll get the choice of installing 32-bit or 64-bit on your machines. You'll have to provide the online services ID. This is where the subscription gets verified. And once it's verified, you'll be ready to use the client. Setup is straightforward. You don't need a DVD, and you can set it up onto 5 machines. So truly, there's not any difference between the Office Professional Plus retail version or the subscription version. The only way you can figure out that you're running Office Professional Plus is going to the backstage of the application, and in that circle you see it specifically calls out that it's the subscription version. Other than that, visually there is no difference between the rich clients that you've been using and when you use this rich client with Office 365. So there's something called desktop setup. This is just ensures that your system meets the minimum requirements, the necessary updates are installed, and it helps you configure clients like Outlook and Lync if you have chosen to install those. This is the part that keeps you up to date in terms of the updates that are required for the Office subscription version to continue to work without any issues. All right, the development environment. By the development environment, I mean two. Like one is the environment you're developing for and the environment you're developing in. So the developing for, so let's look at the operating system and the Office part of it. Your customers could have any of those operating systems or a version of Office based on the plan they have subscribed to. So they could be running Office 2007. So that's something, when you are developing solutions, you will have to keep in mind what your end user is going to have on their machines in terms of software. So that's the developing for part of it. And the developing in, the only thing that you have to keep in mind is if you're going to use the SharePoint online capabilities, you will need to use Visual Studio 2010 to build your solutions. I'm not going to spend too much time on the identity architecture, but the key is these are the changes that are going to happen in the environment. So in the past, you could be in a domain, or you could have a Windows domain account and use that to access SharePoint resources. In case of Office 365, this is the first scenario. If you look at it, Contoso customer. Even though I show ID for a moment, imagine that they do not have AD over there. So they don't even have a domain controller, for example. In that case, they will need to go and access the resources which exists on the cloud. In this case, the identity provider is on the cloud. And this is something that you have to keep in mind when you're building solutions in the Office 365 environment. Then the second scenario is using the online IDs and directory sync. In this case, you can take the user identities and push it to the cloud. The identity provider still sits on the cloud. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. The third scenario is the ADFS scenario. So your organization might have ADFS installed, and in this case, there is a trust relationship between the cloud environment and the ADFS that you have. And in this case, when you hit SharePoint Online, you get it pings you back ADFS, and that's where the authentication happens. Oops, sorry. So the key being, in the ADFS scenario, the authentication is happening on the customer side instead of the cloud. The identity provider sits there. All right. This is the key slide, or one of the key slides. What remains same for Office developers? Once again, Office is Office. There has been no code change. The only difference is, in terms of Office clients, there's a subscription version versus a retail version. This is not a comprehensive list of all the things that will continue to work. This is just to give you a flavor of what continues to work and what might continue to work, if you think, if we take that dimension of thinking. So the other thing you have to keep in mind when we say what remains same is not just the Office client part, it's also the on-premises environment. So if you were using SharePoint on-premises environment and Office rich client, those scenarios, like if you had documents with VBA in it and you were able to round trip it in the on-premises environment, that'll continue to work even in the Office 365 environment. If the add-ins were working in that scenario, they will continue to work in the Office 365 environment. Customization, the same thing, and the services as well. So for the most part, things will continue to work in a similar fashion. So you will not have to change your thought process in terms of how you go about developing solutions in the Office 365 environment. So what changes? If you're going to be accessing SharePoint Online data using the SharePoint Client Object Model from the client side, and if you do not have Active Directory, then you have to use a different authentication model. And I'm going to show you a demo around that where I'm going to use my online ID to access the resources in a SharePoint list using the SharePoint Client Object Model. Word Automation Services is not available. Business Connectivity Services is not available. And as far as sandbox solution development is concerned, there's going to be additional guidance that's going to be coming out. Unfortunately, I do not have the precise details at this point to share. But if you are considering that, I would suggest that you look out for some of that might come out. And we have Donovan's blog. He's going to post on that as well, the link to that article that comes out. So that's about what changes, what remains same, before we jump into demos.
Is OpenXML available for the automation of documents and stuff?
No.
No.
OK. So the first scenario we're going to look at is accessing SharePoint Online data. And this is the scenario where I was talking about you maybe having a rich client or having Office subscription version, and you do not have ADFS, and you want to access data from a SharePoint Online list. The solution is built using Visual Studio and Office Professional Plus. Underneath, the code is using the SharePoint Client Object Model. To be able to accomplish this scenario, we are using remote authentication, and the pattern that is being used is claims-based authentication. This is a very detailed article covering this scenario. It talks in detail about what's happening, what needs to be done, and why is it different. The demo that we have is using a code which is almost identical to this article. So if you are considering building a solution around this, I would suggest that you go and take a look at this article. The solution that I'm going to show is a document level add-in, which will use the SharePoint Client Object Model, and it'll access a list from the SharePoint Online environment. And let me get the demo going. laptop decided to go to sleep. Sorry about that. It's not coming up. What happened here? Sorry about that. For some reason, my laptop is just not coming back up. Trying to reboot my laptop. I don't know what happened. It was working for the last 5 days without a hitch. But when you do demos, things happen. If there are any questions so far, I'll try to answer that. While this comes back up, it's a Win2K8 server. It takes a little bit for it to come back up. So, any questions? Yes?
So, will you be able to run a macro when you run it in Office 365, or all the macros disabled?
So when you say macro, so in that case,
Like
run a macro in a web app?
Yes.
The macros do not work in web apps, correct? So,
Okay, right. The Office web applications are not extensible. Okay, so you can open a Word document in the Excel, in the Word application, web application, and you can see the document. You can do some light editing on it, but macros are not enabled in that document on the web. Okay, if you open that document in the Rich client, open it in Word, then you can run the macro, do that type of thing, save the document back, and that all round trips just fine. But the web applications themselves are not extensible.
Some other information that could be inside of the other document, like the custom properties, this type of XML injection that is there, it's still there.
That's correct. It's still there. It cannot be exposed necessarily in the web application, but it's in the document, and that round trips just fine with the document. When you put it in a document library, when you bring the document down and open it in the Rich client, all that round trips, no problem.
Okay, some problem with the meta file, with the enhanced meta file displaying from the Office 365.
Can you come to the microphone so we can, yeah, just that way we'd.
Let me say it right. Okay, sometimes you have a problem when you show in the PowerPoint in show mode, or sometimes when you show EMF file, EMF plus files, you have some issues how you render them. Is it?
In the web app?
It is sometimes in PowerPoint as well.
Okay.
How it's going to be in the web app? Is it supposed to be exactly the same as in the local app, or you expect it to have some problem?
The intent is that there is fidelity in the web application for PowerPoint as you would also see it. But with that specific scenario, we would just have to look at it and test it, make sure it, make sure it shows the same. Yeah, we'd need to see that. Are there questions about the authentication pieces? Sir, you have a question?
Well, I was going to say on the previous two slides about what's possible and not possible, that's related specifically to the web app versus the local app, or is it something applying to both? I'm hearing you make that delineation between the two.
Yes. The Office web apps, okay, that are on SharePoint, where you can view Word documents, do some light editing of Word documents, that web app is not extensible. Okay, you can't have a custom add-in to that. For the Excel web app, you can open your documents, your Excel documents in the web application for light editing, some changes, and save that back. Okay? So in that case, the web apps are not extensible, like the rich clients. Okay, so with the rich clients, that's really what we're trying to call out here. With the rich clients, primarily everything stays exactly the same for you. Okay, so if you have a custom task pane, you have ribbons that you are going to use that are your add-ins, your document level solutions, your application level solutions, those will work just fine. Just because you have the subscription version, that doesn't change things for those. And Devinder here is just going to call out where we have some deltas between how you have to reach back into SharePoint Online differently than how you would if you were reaching SharePoint data on premises, because we have to be able to negotiate that authentication piece.
Okay, so we're still talking the local application.
Correct.
Okay.
We're talking the rich clients, yes. Yeah. Are you set?
Yes, I'm set.
Great.
So my apologies for that. Don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. So the scenario that I was talking about was like trying to access SharePoint list data. So this is, the scenario is there's a company which sells bikes, and it sells bikes to multiple stores. They have salespeople on the road. They have to fill in a quote form whenever they get a prospective customer. To ensure that the data entry is correct, the company wants the salesperson to access the SharePoint list and get the customer information and enter it in the quote form. So this is a document level add-in. It's in the rich client. This machine is running Office subscription version. So I'll say retrieve SharePoint Online list data. This is where it asks for authentication, like the user has to get authenticated before the list data gets pulled into this add-in. So I'm going to enter my credential. It's going to take a little bit, and it should pull the data at this point of time. So if you notice, this task pane got populated with a list of customers and their customer IDs and the name of the company. So this list actually resides on SharePoint Online. So if you go to the list, if you look at it, Catherine Abel, it's the same user that's getting pulled into the document level add-in. And then the salesperson can go ahead, enter the customer information, and they're good to go. So SharePoint Client Object Model is being used. The claims-based authentication pattern is being used to access the list from SharePoint Online. So that's the first demo. Now moving on to Excel and Excel services. So again, Excel services is a great feature. What it allows you to do is to have one version of the truth. So you might have had a scenario where you had an Excel document which had to be populated by multiple people, had to be sent around, and you never knew what the which Excel document had the accurate information and the up-to-date information. So with Excel services, you can enable that by hosting the document on SharePoint Online and exposing some of the named ranges and charts using the REST API. So the REST API enables embedding of ranges and charts contained in a workbook on a web page using the links. If there are some changes that are made to the underlying workbook, it's refreshed real time, and so you have up-to-date information on the web page. So this Excel services scenario, as long as you have the E3 and the E4 plan, it will continue to work in the same way as it worked on the on-premises environment. So let's go ahead and take a look at a demo on this. So I have an Excel sheet. This Excel sheet has information about multiple states. And what it is showing is the value for different indexes. So maybe I want to use this Excel sheet to figure out where I want to expand my business in. Which states do I want to expand my business in? This Excel file has a few named ranges. It also has a chart. And all these can be accessed using the REST API once this Excel document has been published to SharePoint Online. So the other thing, if you look at it, there's a report card over here. And if you change the parameter in this cell, we get the information corresponding to that state. So now we are seeing a chart with respect to Nevada, as well as the report, which is now driven off the parameter Nevada. So this parameter can be changed. Now once I have the document, I can choose to publish this to SharePoint Online. And for that, I have to go and say sorry. Okay, I have to do save and send, and I can say save to SharePoint. At this point of time, I can select the site to which this Excel file needs to be published. Okay, in this case, it's the Office 365 beta site that I'm using. And before publishing, you have the option to choose which named ranges and charts you want the end users to be able to see. So this was the case in the on-premises environment. This continues to be the same in the Office 365 environment. For our purposes, we are going to publish all of them. I'm not going to actually publish the document because it's already available on the SharePoint site. So I'll go to the site, and so using REST API, you can actually go and view the named ranges and charts that were there in that Excel file. So we can kind of drill down deeper into, say, the ranges. There were a couple of ranges that I had shown, and you can access that using SharePoint, using the REST APIs. So let's kind of go deeper into the report card. For a moment, it seems something is broken, but if you look at the source, you will see that the data is being returned. The reason that it's not being displayed on the browser is because it gets returned in the Atom format, and the browser is unable to recognize that. So to be able to see the data, you will have to convert it to HTML, and you can access that named range within the Excel file using the REST API. And then you can use this and embed it on a web page to provide the latest information with respect to that Excel file on a web page that your end users can access. So you can also drill down into the charts. So if you go to the report, if you look at it, this is a chart for the Washington state. So one of the things we saw was that you could actually change the state parameter and then the report card would get updated. So in the same way, you can actually pass a different, so I'm going to choose this URL, which I'm just trying to save time over here. So in this URL, if you notice at the end, the parameter that is being passed to the REST API is AK, which is for Alaska. And based on that parameter, the corresponding chart is being returned, and that's for Alaska. So this, again, continues to work the same way in SharePoint Online. So you can also take this link and embed it in a Word document, PowerPoint chart, or an Outlook email. So for example, go insert the picture. When you insert, you'll have to insert the link and the image. So if for some reason the person is unable to access the link, they will still have access to the image. And this, if the user is authenticated and there is a change on the Excel file that's on SharePoint Online, this chart will also get updated. So let's try to take a quick look at that. I'm just going to save this document as doc3 on my desktop. I'm going to go. So if you look at it, this is for Alaska, and let's look at the performance subindex. It's 42 over here at this point. And let me go ahead, open this Excel file. Which is available on the SharePoint Online environment. And we are going to try to go and change the parameter for Alaska. And when we open the document, you'll see that it provides the latest number that was changed within the Excel file. I'm going to open it in Excel, because that's where I can go ahead and do the edits. Oh, no. Great. I'll give it one more shot. If it doesn't work, we'll move on. All right, so I was able to open the Excel file. What I'll go ahead and do is I'll change the value for AK, which was 42, to say 30. Save the document. Once again, to Excel file, and then I'll go to the doc3 that I had saved. If you notice, the performance subindex shows 30, which is the value that I just entered. So the authentication continues to happen because I am logged in at this point of time, and it's the Word chart, the chart that's being displayed in Word is actually up to date at this point. So Excel services continues to work in the same way as you would have seen in the on-premises environment for Office 365, as long as you have the E3 or the E4 plan. So moving on. So InfoPath scenarios. InfoPath forms are a great design time experience, provides a lot of feature capabilities for the information worker, and the Office Business Application Builder the experience continues to remain the same in Office 365. One of the things that you have to do in Office 365 before you can go ahead and use the InfoPath form services is make sure that you go and configure them. The configuration part is fairly easy. There's a portal. You go to the portal, go to Manage, and then use the link to go ahead and configure InfoPath Forms services before you use that. This is no different than what you saw in the on-premises environment, but it's essential that you do this before you can go ahead and use it in the SharePoint Online environment as well. So once you click the link, you'll have a couple of options to select from, nothing different. And then if you are considering accessing external data using in InfoPath Forms, then you'll have to enable the web service proxy. This is very critical to make sure that you're able to get to external data while using InfoPath Forms. And then there's a data connection library, which is where you store all the external data connections. The same external data connection can be used across multiple forms. Again, remains same for Office 365. So once a list has been published to SharePoint, a form has been published to SharePoint, the design time experience in Office 365 is no different. You click the Customize Form button, and you get the same experience that you would when you were using the on-premises. There will be some authentication that's required, but that's about it. The design experience continues to be the same. You can change the layout, behavior, and all. So I'm not going to go into the details of it, but the key being it's all the same, and we are going to take a look in a live demo as well. So SharePoint Workspace also enables offline support, which is going to be no different once again in Office 365. And if you have been using this feature and functionality, you will have a similar experience with Office 365 as well. So let's jump into the demos for InfoPath Forms. One of the things I'll do is I'll start with the offline scenario. I'm going to open SharePoint Workspace and also launch the site. So if you see, there's a demo site. In this, I have a very rudimentary list of employees, and I'll go ahead and make an update over here, and that'll get the list will get updated on the SharePoint site as well. So this is the employees list on my SharePoint Online site, and I have the same list in the SharePoint Workspace. So I'll go ahead, make a quick edit, 4, and what you'll notice is when I save, since I'm logged in at this point of time, it will synchronize it right away. And if I wasn't, then it will wait for the time for me to log in, and at that point, the synchronization will happen. So if you look at the didn't synchronize. Okay, maybe I have to hit sync today. So it's synchronizing the employees list, and I'll go ahead and refresh this, and if you see, it's become Atlanta 4. So the offline experience in Office 365 continues to be the same. If you have been using InfoPath Forms and services on an offline mode, you can go ahead and do that without any hitches. So now taking a look at the design time experience, I'll go to this course list that I have and open it in an InfoPath form. And I have the same capabilities available. I can go ahead, add more controls to this. I can do the page design, data, nothing changes. The design time experience continues to be the same. Now, in terms of accessing external data, we have a form here which is using a REST web service to access data from a from a Northwind products database, and then using that database, a product list is being populated. So if I go ahead and right-click over here and look at the drop-down list properties, you will see that the data source is Northwind products database, and using REST web services, the product list is going to be pulled into the drop-down. So external data access using InfoPath Forms continues to be the same. And you can also look at the database schema over here. So that's that. And if I go ahead and create a new item for that list, you will see that the drop-down has been populated by a list of products that is being that is in the Northwind's products database. So external data connections continue to work. All right. So we are making good pace at this point. The time that we lost in the reboot seems to be caught up with that. Access and access services. Once again, in the Office 2000, in the Office 365 environment, all of these capabilities continue to exist. The demo that we are going to, I'm not going to go drill down into this. If you've been using access and access services, your experience is going to be the same. What we are going to do is try to take a database and publish it as a web database. One of the things we have to keep in mind while publishing a web database is using web-ready objects. There's a good visual indication in Access where globes are present on all web-ready objects. So please keep that in mind when you go ahead and try to design a web database. So when you publish to a database to Access services online, this is the conversion that's going to happen. The Access database becomes a SharePoint site, the tables become lists, and so on. So we're going to do that right now. And there's one thing that's currently different in the beta site, and I'll call that out while we go through the demo. So this demo, there will be times where things will be slow during the publishing part. So please keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead, just use a template for a contacts web database, and go ahead and add a couple of entries to this database before we go ahead and publish it to the SharePoint Online environment. So I'll just create Rob Brown, engineer. That's my second entry. Battery. Two quick entries. And if you look at it, there are reports available, and this is what you're going to see missing on the when we publish this to SharePoint Online. So to publish, you just have to click Publish to Access Services. You point out to identify the site to which you want to publish this web database to, and go ahead and so this is going to take a little bit of time. At the end of the process, there will be a link available to this where we can go and see the contacts that we entered. You will see that the reports are broken at this point of time. You cannot see the reports in the SharePoint Online environment, but it's not that information has got lost. It's at this point the SQL reporting services are not enabled, as a result of which you do not see the reports. However, if you want to see the reports, you can still open it up in Access, the rich client, and you will continue to have the same experience. So this is the link to the site that got created. It's going to take another 30 seconds or so before we are able to view the site where the database that we had got published. Just refresh it. Sometimes it works quicker. After this, we have one more demo for Visio. And Visio, even though it is not a part of Office Professional Plus, it's one of the key applications for developing solutions for Office. It provides a great workflow. It provides great workflow solutions. So that's a demo we are going to see after this. So these were the two users we entered on the database, the 2 contacts, Patrick Ellis and Rob Brown. We can see that. This is what I was talking about. It says access service reports are not enabled in the current beta environment. So this is something that you will see if you plan to use it. And if you go to Report Center, obviously you'll see the same issue. Just to make sure that the workaround of opening it in access services continues to work, what we'll do is we're going to add another user called Vicky Brown, and now we have these 3, and we can go ahead and open this in Access, the rich client, and you'll see that the reports will continue to work. So that's the workaround, the suggested workaround at this point of time to be able to use the reports in Access. And if we go to the Report Center, the address book, you'll see the 3rd entry that we just entered. So it's not that the reports are broken, it's just you have to use a workaround for now. All right. Moving to the so Visio is as I mentioned, is a great tool for building workflows. It's interoperable with SharePoint Designer. Visio also allows the business users to go ahead and create a workflow or the work process, and then it can be the file can be exported out as a VWI, which is a Visio workflow interchange file, and then imported into a SharePoint Designer, at which point someone from IT or a developer can go ahead and add more logic to it. So it's a great tool. It continues to work in Office 365. Once again, it's not a part of Office Professional Plus, but if you have used Visio, your experience will continue to be the same in the SharePoint Online environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a demo for that. So the scenario is there's a company which wants its employees to go ahead and enter their times, and if they have time in a timesheet, and if they have worked overtime, they have to provide that, and then once they submit their timesheets, it goes through a certain workflow logic, and then the overtime gets approved or not based on what was entered. So the workflow is once the timesheet has been submitted, it's checked for overtime. If there is overtime in the timesheet, it's sent to a manager for approval, and it's checked. The manager looks at it and decides either to agree with the overtime and hence pay the employee, or deny that overtime and not pay the employee. So it's a very rudimentary workflow for this demo. So this workflow can be created by, say, a business user in Visio. And once they are done, there is a check diagram functionality which ensures that the diagram is validated, and it'll work fine in a SharePoint Designer. Once you're done creating the diagram, you will go ahead and export the diagram into a Visio workflow interchange file, and then import it to SharePoint Designer. I'm not going to export it because it's already there on the SharePoint site. And now we'll go to the SharePoint site and have a look at the same workflow in the SharePoint Designer. So this is where I'm going to go ahead, open the SharePoint Designer. Again, I have said that a lot of times, the experience is going to be the same. It's no different than the on-premises environment. It's no different in terms of the tool and what you can do with it. So if I go to the workflows, the timesheet approval workflow is there, and it'll open the workflow. So what happens is when you import the VWI file, you get the basic structure to the workflow, and then someone from, as I said, from IT or a developer can go ahead and add more rules to it and make it a little more comprehensive. So this is how the current workflow looks like. So what we are going to do is create a new timesheet, and we're going to just use someone, Alan, and say Alan's timesheet. Enter the hours. It's not a smart timesheet, so I'll enter the total hours are 42. It's not calculating by itself. The overtime is 2 hours because the stipulated time is 40 hours in a week. And the timesheet is created at this point. And if we go to the workflows, and at this point, we can go ahead and kick off the workflow. So this, we are going to wait for that to come back. It takes a little bit of time. Workflow processing takes a little bit of time in the beta environment. So what we'll do instead is go back to the site, and once a workflow has been kicked off, it'll show in progress. And at this point, see, overtime for approval is here, and basically at this point, one of the approvers, which is me in this case, can go ahead and approve, reject, or approve or reject the overtime, and based on that, the process will continue. And that's the workflow experience with Visio and SharePoint Designer. Again, it's no different than what you have seen in the on-premises environment. This is SharePoint Workspace and Outlook. That also continues to be the same. Whatever used to work before in on-premises environment will be the same in the Office 365. So in summary, if you look at it, the code base continues to remain the same. Most of the capabilities that you were able to have in the on-premises SharePoint and a rich client of Office will continue to be the same when it comes to SharePoint Online or Office 365 and using the Office subscription version. There are some of the things that I've called out which do not work, but for the most part, your experiences are going to be the same. So whatever you've thought about or whatever you've been developing in terms of solutions for Office will continue to work for the most part. As I said, please continue to look for some additional guidance that's going to come out before general availability of the product. There'll be some more articles or white papers coming out in terms of guidance. But for the most part, things will continue to be the same, and you still have a lot of options available. These are the related sessions. You can access these after the conference is over. There are some other track resources that are available. There's an Office platform Twitter we have started. That's where we are going to try to provide the latest information on what is going on at Office platform. So I would recommend joining that. That's where it's very new. You will not see many followers at this point of time. But the key is we are trying to provide the latest information over there regarding Office 365 or Office solution development in general for now and going forward. And there are other resources available. Please complete an evaluation. Once again, apologies for the demo, my machine going down. And that's all I had. So if there are questions, I'll be waiting after the session as well. So if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer that. I'll be at the booth also later in the day. If you have questions, please let me know. Thank you very much for attending the session.